Welcome to Technovation. I'm your host, Peter High. I'm pleased to welcome Dean Del Vecchio to the broadcast today. Dean is the Executive Vice President, Chief Information Officer, and Chief of Operations at Guardian Life, a roughly 160-year-old mutual company with roughly $10.5 billion in annual revenue. He's held that role for roughly 2.5 years and leads a team of about 4,500 employees. He had previously been the EVP, CIO, and head of enterprise shared services of the company. In his previous roles, those have included Chief Information Officer and Global Head of IT Services at News Corp and CIO of Dow Jones. Dean, welcome. It's great to speak with you today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Well, Dean, I mentioned your current dual set of responsibilities, both as CIO as well as Chief of Operations. Maybe take a quick moment, if you would, and talk a bit about the two sides of your set of responsibilities. What do they entail?
Sure, great. So on the CIO side, fairly traditional from a technology perspective, responsible for infrastructure, development, operations, managing all of the technology, both from a infrastructure and software perspective. On the Chief of Operations side, it's quite a unique complement of responsibilities. So it's real estate, it's facilities, it's HR operations, it's benefit operations, it's physical security, it's operations of new business, onboarding of new business, it's customer service. And then we have a fairly large captive India operations of about 2,000 some odd people in 2 locations that provide the traditional business process outsourcing functions as well as the technology outsourcing functions, split fairly 50-50 between the two responsibilities there as well.
And it's interesting, as you mentioned, real estate is part of your set of responsibilities. And I can only imagine that you're thinking quite a bit about that as you contemplate the future of work. I believe you've got a Guardian on the Go strategy, which I'd love to have you articulate a little bit. And if you wouldn't mind translating that into how you're thinking about where work is done and why, I'd be interested in your perspectives, please.
No, absolutely. So the Guardian on the Go program, actually, fortunately for us, Superstorm Sandy really set the stage for us. When I first joined Guardian, the prior CEO, Deanna Mulligan, actually really felt strongly about preparing us for another event like that and to make sure that the company was well prepared. So we really took a very focused approach on our infrastructure, on our capabilities for remote work capabilities, and put in place a robust strategy that really allowed all of our employees at any given point to be able to work from home, work remotely. And we formalized that more importantly around what we called Guardian on the Go, which we really had a program that said you could work, 1 day a week remotely, or you could work full-time remotely. And it allowed flexibility, and we leveraged the technology to allow people to do that. So when, unfortunately, when COVID hit, it was really a non-event for us for the most part. We made a decision on March 10th to send everybody home. And in preparation since Superstorm Sandy, we made sure everybody had a laptop. We didn't have desktops. Everybody had mobile capability. And we had the infrastructure, the VPN infrastructure to support, 10,000 plus of our employees. So it really was a matter of just reminding people, take home your power cord, take home your laptop and some of the basic essentials. And, we really haven't been back in the office up until recently. So it was, again, a lot of effort, a lot of preparedness on a lot of people's parts, but it allowed us to really exercise those muscles in full force when COVID hit.
It's very interesting. And what are you, and I realize that these plans are probably still in process, as you think about the future, where do you see work being done? Will it be sort of akin to what you described before? Will all that you learned from Superstorm Sandy and all that you put in place essentially just continue even after the point at which it's safe for more people to make their way into offices?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what COVID did now actually was really accelerate the adoption of the technology. So even though we had people working from home and we were using the technology, it was tough getting people to put their video on. It was tough, getting people to share, screens and documents and all of that. But now it's become second nature. And I think a lot of companies are finding that the technology, the people have caught up to the technology now. So the adoption of it has really come full circle, and it's no longer a push. It's now a pull, right? They're asking for more technology and more capabilities to make their lives easier on a daily basis. So I think we're going to be in this hybrid model. I think we're going to continue to be in a hybrid model. Guardian embarked on a real estate portfolio redesign or reimagination a few years ago. So most of our locations already have been modernized with, the dynamic workplaces and open space planning and all of those things. Now, I think the challenge for most companies is going to be how do you incorporate that into a much more inclusive hybrid model. And what I mean by that is, when we're all remote today, we're all on the same playing field. We're all one of those chiclets on the box and on the screen, and we all have the same airtime. Now, when we go back into this hybrid environment, just like pre-COVID, it was a challenge when you had 5 people in a room having a conversation and the remaining of the participants in that meeting remotely on a single screen or multiple single screens to get the same amount of airtime, get the same amount of engagement. And that's one of the things we're really trying to focus on, and make sure we figure out how do we keep that kind of level playing field for the people who are in the office when they need to be, and people who are remote at the same time. So that's an area that we're still focusing on. But to answer your question specifically, I think it's going to be a hybrid model going forward.
Yeah, as a lot of organizations anticipate as well. Yeah. Well, hey, I wanted to also ask you about, I know from our past conversations that yours is a culture that really helps drive the innovation of the organization more generally speaking. And I wonder if you can kind of identify some of the key cultural attributes that you all take pride in that you believe are differentiating.
Yeah, so it's a great question. And so when we embarked on innovation at Guardian, we wanted to make it so it wasn't a single function or a single group that was responsible for innovation. You hear about innovation labs, and not that there's anything that doesn't work in those. There's appropriate times and appropriate opportunities, but we made it much more broad. So we said everybody in the organization can participate in innovation, and that's our employees, it's our partners, it's our strategic partners. So we've actually embarked on what we call innovation challenges, and when we look at innovation in 3 kind of simple categories. So one is just core innovation. It's anything somebody does today. If they think about a better way, a quicker way, faster, or more simple way to perform their task, that could be innovative. Could be innovation. We look at it as adjacent innovation. If there's somebody else doing something out there, it doesn't have to be in our industry or in our segment or market. Or if somebody's doing something really interesting and differently than we are today, let's copy it. Right? No shame. And then there's the transformational innovation. Those are those big ideas. It's really rethinking about maybe a market segment. It could be rethinking about how we do work entirely. We've been quite innovative in the way we thought about operating in the cloud, for example. We've been operating in the cloud since 2018. We shut down our data center in 2018, so we no longer have an owned operating data center, right? We said, let's look at the things that we can do to be more effective and more efficient. And managing a data center is not going to give us a competitive advantage. But having people focusing on improving, consumer experience, improving the products that we have, and improving the way we deliver those products, that's where I want our employees focused. So we've made some concerted efforts there, and we do innovation challenges where we'll put out a challenge question, and we have employees opine on it. We have employees vote on it. We have them do pairwise comparisons on those things, and then the good ideas that bubble up, we actually do a Shark Tank experience. And we have people, put forth their idea, present it to a group of people, and we vote and we challenge questions, and then if it gets thumbs up, we move it forward to a minimum viable product.
That's fantastic. Well, as you speak of culture, obviously, it is the what bonds the people of your organization together. And right now, as has been the case, that was the case pre-COVID, and it was perhaps maybe just a little bit of a blip during the portion of COVID, but the need to find good people is acute. And I know you've had some really creative ideas about ways in which you can develop talent inside the organization. Can you talk a bit about your Code for Good and Automation for Good programs, please?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we've taken a really big focus on reskilling, upskilling, reskilling, however you want to describe it. But we've really focused on our employees and saying, here's where we're going as an organization. Here's the things that are important to us. Like moving to the cloud early on, that was very important to us. So we made sure we put programs in place for our employees to be able to get skilled, be able to take the opportunity to say, do they want to participate in where we're going? And then give them all the tools, capability, time, coaching, and support to do that. And then when you think about, even the operational side of the house, there's functions as everybody's looking at, and like what mentioned earlier, the adoption of technology. I think one of those is just basic automation, robotic process automation, for example. And so there are functions that are, just day in, day out functions that make sense to automate. So can we have our employees participate in that? And can they participate in one from a development perspective? So the program you mentioned, Code for Good, we're looking at taking people that are in non-traditional technology roles, become developers. And we're on a second cohort now. We had the first one very successful. We had, a handful of individuals go through that. It's a 6-month kind of boot camp programming, learning, and then they're out on the floor, and we make sure that there's a job for them and that they have an opportunity to participate in that. So now what we're kicking off, and you mentioned it, we're trying to create a program around automation for good. And it's just basic automation capabilities on, again, those high transactional type functions that, quite honestly, employees could be adding much more value and dealing with much more complex issues if they had the time. But because they're dealing with all these transactional things, so why not allow them to be able to self-automate and identify those tasks that they wish they didn't have to do in the first place, and then create a much more fulfilling job for themselves. So we're looking at ways across the board, whether it's technology, upskilling, if you are a mainframe developer to a cloud, or whether you are a non-technology person and utilizing the tools and capabilities now to automate some of the functions you do today, for example.
Yeah, so interesting. And it really deals in some ways with the conundrum of certain kinds of responsibilities perhaps going away because of that very automation, for instance,
Exactly.
And finding new opportunities for the people who've done good work in those areas in jobs that are going to be less in demand in the future, and investing in them so that they can be part of the skills of the future.
Exactly. And who would know best than the individuals performing those functions on a day in, day out basis?
Well said. Very well said. I know another area that you and your team have been focused on is differentiating customer experience and developing the kinds of tools to be able to do that. I wonder if you could share a bit about some of the methods that you're using to create that differentiation.
Sure, and that's an area that the way I describe it is we're not dealing with competing with our competitors in the insurance and the financial institution. We're dealing with an individual's last digital experience. So I say, probably at some point during the day, you were on, especially this time of year with Amazon, for example, their Prime Week and so on, or you were, when you're home, you're on Netflix or you're on Apple TV. Those experiences are very simple. They're very predictable. They recommend what you probably should watch next or purchase next, but they're just very proactive. And we should be just as proactive when it comes to servicing our policyholders or our plan holders. An individual looking for a claim status, or they're looking to make a beneficiary change, or they're wondering where their claim payment is, right? We should be able to provide technologies and capabilities to kind of just like you think in technology, shift left when you do development, shift all those capabilities. How do you shift left so the consumer can self-service when they want, where they want, how they want? And if they do want to call us, absolutely, we'll be there to take that call. But how do we make it easier for them to do business with us? And that's not just from the end consumer, but also our constituents, our providers, our stakeholders, the individuals that maybe sell our products, or the brokers, or the agencies. So we're really looking at the end-to-end kind of supply chain or life cycle of an experience and saying, where can we digitize? Where can we make it self-service? Where can we automate it and make it proactive and predictive? And we're doing that in ways of, a digital agent, for example, right? We've installed using AI and automation, the digital agent capability, so you could chat with a digital agent and get claim status or get eligibility of benefits, for example. So we're looking at each aspect of the relationship and the journey, whether it's the initial onboarding piece, can we help people with decision tools to help them, select the right products? And then ultimately, when they actually are on board and they need services, can we provide them with all of those avenues? If they want to, do a chatbot, we can do that through their phone. If they want to, go to the web, they can do that. If they want a mobile app, we'll provide that capability. So we're not there yet, but that's how we're looking at it, and we're looking at it across all medium and as well as all segments of that lifecycle engagement.
It's interesting across this conversation to hear about how innovative the company is and how progressive it is in its thinking and its evolution. I mentioned at the outset that this is a company that's been around for more than a century and a half. And I can only imagine that, like any company that's even been around for a tenth of that amount of time, that there's legacy that builds up. There's modernization that needs to happen. You've been in role for 8 years, so you've been in an executive role at the company, I should say, for 8 years now. And I wonder if you can just reflect upon that period of time and some of the changes, perhaps, that you made in the early or midpoints of your time with Guardian Life that set up the organization to be able to take advantage of some of what you've described today. Easier said than done, and I got to imagine there was a lot of kind of hard work, foundational work that was done by you, the team, and you have put in place.
Yes, absolutely. So we took a very, I would say, pragmatic approach to it in two ways. First, we looked at all of the infrastructure, and we said the first 1 to 3 years, we focused on kind of the foundational capabilities and modernizing that technology. So that was, the traditional data center technology, the network, all of that architecture, connecting our locations, our sites, our consumers. And we revamped and modernized a lot of that. And as I said earlier, we got to the point where we said, okay, we're no longer going to be in the data center business, and we're going to, move to the cloud on things that we could, and made a lot of sense to move to the cloud. As you mentioned, we're a 160-year-old company, and we have legacy platforms like most insurance companies. So our policy administration system, I joke about it, but it was built before we put a man on the moon. And I also joke, I say, the good news is it's still running, and the bad news is it's still running. But so that's a system that we've kind of now we're looking at how do we modernize that. So we went through infrastructure first, then we went through the applications that can run in the cloud. And now over the next few years, we're focusing on those monolithic platforms, the claims engines, the policy admin systems. And we have two major programs going on, one on the group side of the house, so servicing our group businesses and products, and then one on the individual market side of the house. And we're doing major platform modernization. And the way we describe it is, I'd like to get rid of a decade of technology every 3 years, because we have multiple decades of technology, as you can imagine, being a 160-year-old insurance company, and it doesn't, go away overnight. So, and, I'd be remiss if I didn't, mention that the team we have here is an incredible team. We've been at this for, like you said, since the day I got here just a little under 8 years ago. We put a very focused modernization plan in place, and we've been, marching forward and making, great progress to do that. And it's with a lot of people's, effort and work and dedication and commitment to keep this going.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. I mentioned also in the intro that you've had a number of what I refer to as CIO-Plus roles. So while you at Dow Jones, you were quote unquote just the CIO. At News Corp, you added IT services to your responsibilities. Upon joining Guardian Life, you were the CIO and enterprise shared services head. Correct. You are now, as I've mentioned, as we spoke about at the outset, the CIO and the chief of operations. Talk a bit about the rationale in the additional set of responsibilities that you have had now across multiple organizations for more than a decade, and what that says to you about the good work done in IT translating into some other areas.
Yeah, it's a good question, and it really started when I was at Dow Jones. They made me, in addition to the CIO, that's the first opportunity I had to run real estate and become their chief administration officer. So I had real estate, sourcing, facilities, and a bunch of other things as well. And that's when I started seeing the real connection between real estate and technology. And fortunately, where we are today, when you think about it, the whole workforce of the future and workplace of the future, it goes hand in hand, right? You can't think about implementing a new workplace without thinking about the technology, the enabling technology. How do you do remote? How do you do hybrid? Technology is going to be at the center of all of that, right? How do you do scheduling? How do you do predictive scheduling? How do you leverage AI tools to help you know maybe I should be in one location versus another because of where the rest of the people are going to be or the type of work that needs to be done? I think you're going to see technology being integrated into your daily much more than it has been or already is. So I think there's a natural connection there. And when you think about most things today that you're doing in operations, for example, the automation or the capabilities of leveraging automation in operations on the business operations functions, having the ability to, pull those two things together and accelerate it. I joked around when I was at Dow Jones, there used to be a lot of debate between the operations team and the technology team about what to automate, when to automate. And then when I became responsible for it, I made those decisions very easy. I said the person I'd be arguing with is myself in the mirror many times, and I normally win the argument. But all kidding aside, I just see more and more of that connection, more and more of the dependency and enablement, more of an enablement than dependency that technology can have on the business functions. So having the perspective and having the teams that close together, more importantly, all going in the same direction, understanding the benefits and supporting each other and learning from each other, being part of the same team, I just think has helped accelerate and given us the opportunity to accelerate some of our activities here.
That's great. It's very interesting how you've cultivated this sort of shared services mindset and a broader set of responsibilities that can be driven with technology and digital. Really, really interesting. I appreciate you sharing that, Dean. There's a lot of dynamism in your industry and a lot of startups and insurtech organizations that have sprung up. And a lot of innovation, generally speaking, including innovation, of course, that you're driving as a company, as you pointed out, with some of the methods that you're using. How do you think about that broader ecosystem and curating it towards a bigger advantage for your company?
Yeah, we're actually quite engaged in that community. So, and we engage in it in multiple ways. So, for one case, we actually invest in the startup communities. We have a venture fund where we invest in individual startup communities in insurtech, infotech, and fintech. And we do that for a couple different reasons. One is, we want to invest in companies, obviously, that we're going to hopefully get a good return on. But more importantly, we're investing in companies where we think we could learn from the individuals that are embarking in our space, or maybe even not even in our space, but we could look at opportunities to take advantage of their technology. And then three, we're getting access to individuals and their thinking and how they go about, developing new technologies or get the startup mentality and get the startup juices flowing. And one of the things that enables us to do that is like I said, is the investment piece. But we also are a partnership in New York City, where they bring in startups, and we mentor and we sponsor each year. We sponsor 1 to 2 startups in the insurtech and infotech and fintech arenas. So we try to do it in a couple different ways. And then lastly, we look for if there's opportunities to do co-development with them. So we have quite a few things going on right now where we're working with individual insurtech companies doing co-development projects, and it could be in underwriting, it could be in customer-facing opportunities, it could be in scanning X-rays, for example. So all across the board, but we're very active with the startup community.
I wanted to also ask you, as you look to the future, Dean, what are some trends that particularly excite you? Areas that are making their way onto your roadmap that you think will be particularly meaningful as you contemplate the journey ahead?
Sure. So I think that just data in general. We've done a lot of efforts here over the last couple of years, building the framework. Just like I mentioned about, we focused on infrastructure, then applications. Now we're doing the monolithic platforms. During that period too, we said data is going to be at the center of everything. So we built a very robust data lake and we're at the point now where we're getting value out of it, right? So I think everybody embarked on trying to figure out, what to do with data. First there was data warehouses, now there's data lakes, and now you're hearing about lake houses, right? So it's taking it to the next phase. But the most important thing is, are you getting value out of it? Is the business able to take that information, use it in a way they haven't used it in the past, and derive outcomes? And the outcome could be a better customer experience. The outcome can be, reduced pricing. It could be new product development because of the new information you have. So that's one that's really exciting me now, is that we're finally, I think as a industry, we're seeing better use and better value coming out of these data efforts and initiatives. The other is then underlying that is, I think, automation, AI, doesn't exist without good sound data behind it. So I think that's enabling now these tools and the capabilities of using, the intelligent automation and some of the other capabilities in which we're trying to automate things is benefiting from that as well. So I think AI, when you think about AI, when we talk about AI, there's kind of, intelligent automation, there's smart automation, there's, machine learning. I think we're finally at the phase now where people are really deriving benefit out of that as well. And the adoption of it is accelerating. So that's exciting me that we're hitting that kind of tipping point now where, again, you're not trying to push it, it's being pulled, and people are now asking for it and wanting more of it. So I think that's where the people are catching up with the technology there as well. So I'm excited about those things. I still think the digital experience and customer experience for us is in very early stages. I think there's so much more we're going to benefit from that as an industry, and we're getting to the point now where we're starting to see value there as well.
Excellent. Well, Dean Del Vecchio, thank you so much for joining me today, sharing a bit about your experience at both at Guardian Life, but also beyond. Your very interesting dual set of responsibilities that, if anything, add to a broader set of dual responsibilities that you've had across multiple organizations, the ways in which you've led through some really trying times, the quote unquote advantages of prior difficulties, ensuring the organization was better prepared than otherwise would have been, perhaps, for all that's befallen the organization and the country and the world over the past year. It's been a really great conversation.
No, thank you. Enjoyed the time with you.